Rumi tells the story of a man who was poverty-stricken, and he lived in Damascus. I hope I get this story right. It's a cool story. All he had was his family home. His business had been failing. He couldn't take care of his bills. He couldn't take care of his family. And because he was a spiritual person, he turned to God and just said, I don't know what to do. I have tried my best, but everything I do is failing. Please, can you help me, help my family somehow? And he had a dream. And in that dream, he was told that there was a treasure waiting for him in the distant city of Cairo. Big city, long way away. But he had no money. The idea of traveling anywhere was crazy. He didn't even have enough money to pay his bills on a daily basis. Could barely afford food, and only had a place to live because he had this house that his family owned for generations. But this dream came night after night until finally he had no choice. He just felt like maybe there was something to the dream. Maybe God was speaking to him in some way. And anyway, his life was so terrible, he just decided to just try. So he basically walked and hitchhiked on the roads until he got to Cairo. And in Cairo, he had no money. So he had to beg for food, and he didn't have a place to stay. So he was wandering, waiting for some sort of sign from God. Now, at that time, Cairo was being plagued by late night thieves out in the city. And the king had made a rule that anyone out past a certain time at night was to be arrested because they were probably a thief. So he was wandering the night, begging anyone who he could see for something to eat. And as it got later, he just kind of wandered the streets, and he got arrested by a police officer and was taken to jail. So they asked him, what are you doing in Cairo? How do we know that you're not a thief? Prove to us that you're not a thief. And he just started weeping. He was so destitute and desperate. He started weeping, and he said, all I can tell you is my story. What can I do? How can I prove to you anything? I'm telling you, you won't believe me. But this is what happened, and this is why I'm in Cairo, and this is why I have no money. And he told them that this dream had brought him there. And the jailer says to him, listen, my friend, Rumi says that they were moved by his emotion. They could tell that he was a sincere person because he had so much emotion in telling his story. But the jailer said, listen, you can't be so simple-minded. You can't just listen to any dream that you have, any idea that you have. Just because something pops into your head doesn't mean it's worth risking your whole life and going off to some distant place. And the jailer said to him, I've also had a dream about finding some blessing or treasure in some distant place. But I don't do anything about it. I'm not a fool. I stay here. I stay with my family. I work my job. I'm a normal person. You can't just follow some crazy dream. And then the jailer tells him, for example, in my dream, not only was I told what city to go to, I was told to go to Damascus, the city that the guy is from. He said, but I was told exactly the address of where to find this treasure and the name of the people who would live there. And he tells him the name and the address, and it is that man's own name and address in Damascus. So this jailer was telling him his own name and his own address in Damascus. And in that moment, he realized that God had made him go all the way to Cairo, because if God had told him in the dream to dig into the corner of his basement to find some buried ancient treasure or family treasure, he wouldn't have listened. But because he received the miracle of having to go through the difficulty of going to some distant place and hear these things in a miraculous way, it it changed him and transformed him in a way that he was willing to hear and listen. So sometimes we go through difficulties so that our hearts are prepared to receive the message that God has to give us. Because if God gave it to us, without those difficulties, we may not be prepared. Our hearts might not be prepared. And it was so miraculous that as soon as they let him go, he immediately went home and dug in his house in the place that this jailer had told him, and found this treasure and was able to care for his family and recognized that it was a miracle from God. So we think about our lives in a different way when we reflect on stories like this. What do you think?